Being afraid of heights, jumping out of an aeroplane with a parachute on seems to me like a crazy thing to do. However, a few people in history have done it without parachutes. Not many of them have survived, but 5 did, and here's their stories. In 1944, Nicholas Alcmeidi was a tail gunner in a Lancaster bomber. Alcmeidi's Lancaster was under attack by German night fighters and caught fire. It began to spiral out of control, which caused the tail gunner somewhat of a problem. He was trapped in the tail of the plane, the flames moving towards him. His parachute had been charred to embers. Alcmeidi then had a choice of deaths, either burning to death in the aeroplane, Joan of Arc style, or jumping out, 9/11 jumper style. He chose the latter and leapt from the plane at a height of 5,500 meters. Fingers crossed this was the less painful death of the two, but instead of becoming a blob of strawberry jam, he had the fortune to hit the canopy of several pine trees that cushioned his fall, and then landed on a mattress of soft snow. The poor guy did sprain his leg though. The Gestapo made a pretense that they were a bit miffed with his story at first when he was captured, but in truth they were probably getting used to pilots jumping out of planes at great heights and living. A very similar incident happened to Ivan Chizov. In 1942, in the middle of a raging air and land battle, and while his plane was being attacked by several German fighters, the Soviet pilot decided to take a stroll out of the door of his plane at 7,000 meters. And if you think that was rather eccentric, he then decided not to open his perfectly functioning parachute strapped to his back, thinking it may attract machine gun fire and he could be killed, unlike falling 7,000 meters without a parachute. By the time he was out of machine gun range, Ivan had lost consciousness during the freefall, but even in his sleep he still had the good aim to hit the side of a snowy ravine, gradually being cushioned and slowed by the slope as he slid down, landing right at the feet of an utterly amazed troop of Soviet cavalry who had seen the entire fall and whisked him away to safety completely uninjured. Not to be outdone by the Russians and the British, the Americans decided to get one of their pilots to throw himself out of a plane. Alan McGee was in a flying fortress over France in 1943 when a clumsy German pilot shot one of his wings off at 6,700 meters. The plane started spiraling towards the ground, and the wounded McGee, his parachute shredded, had a choice of going down with the plane or jumping. He chose the latter. He bowed out and lost consciousness, which is probably a good thing because he got to miss the horror show that followed. In an act of precision suicide bombing, he managed to break his fall by crashing through the glass roof of Saint-Nazaire railway station, sustaining several broken bones, a partially severed arm, lung, kidney and face damage. How many train passengers that suffered heart attacks from the surprise of seeing him crash through the roof is unrecorded, but fortunately the Germans had the technology to build him, to create the world's first 6 million Deutschmark air pilot, and he lived to a ripe old age. Now the previous 3 had the choice of bailing out and taking their chances in the air without a parachute or staying in the plane. The next 2 people who fell from the sky didn't have that luxury. In 1972, Desna Fischer, a flight attendant on Yugoslav Airlines, was in the tail section of her plane which was flying at 10,000 meters when a bomb exploded on board. The plane hurtled to earth, hitting the snow-covered side of a mountain. Desna miraculously survived, but the fall broke both her arms. She was in a coma for 27 days and was temporarily paralyzed from the waist down. She describes how she was found by rescuers. I was in the middle part of the plane. I was found with my head down and my colleague on top of me. One part of my body with my leg was in the plane and my head was out the plane. A catering trolley was pinned against my spine and kept me on the plane. Sounds pretty nasty. Probably thinking it can't get any worse, but it can. Probably the most famous survivor story of all is Julia Kubek. She was on board a plane over Peru when it was struck by lightning and broke up in midair. The 17-year-old plummeted 3,200 meters, still seatbelted to the row of 3 chairs. The chair seemed to have hit the canopy of the trees and slowed her descent so much she only sustained minor injuries when she hit the ground. However, her ordeal had only just begun, as she was now stranded in the middle of the Peruvian jungle. Fortunately, her father had given her jungle survival training, and over 10 days, surviving only on a bag of sweets and stream water, she managed to walk to safety. So there we have it, proof that next time you go skydiving, no matter what your instructor tells you, parachutes are in fact optional.